Hey everybody, welcome back to another talking point. I'm back here with a book now that I read earlier this fall in like September and October timeframe. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Wow, this book was one of the deepest books I've ever read. I know I will go back to it. I'll learn a whole nother set of circumstances, perception, and relativity from the book in my own life, and you'll see kind of what I mean by that if you've either read it or from the description and the experience that I'm about to account from that I gained from this book. So this is written by Viktor Frankl. He was a survivor of the Holocaust in World War II. He talks about what his life was like before, during, and then after the Holocaust, and it's really deep. This book actually, I've always heard of it, Man's Search for Meaning. I never really knew who wrote it, what it was about. I was just like, oh, I'm going to read that someday, right? One day type thinking. And I was listening to an interview by Tom Bilyeu, the creator of Quest Nutrition, the CEO, and he has a show called Impact Theory where he interviews many great people, and he talked about one of his books, one of his top 3 books or whatever, one of the books that changed his life was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He said that was like the book. So I was like, shit, I gotta read it now. Like, if that's the book, I look up to this guy. Not only is he successful by building a business, building a brand that helps people, that gives nutrition and value to people, but he has a successful life in his marriage. He's doing what he loves by interviewing other successful people and has given so much immense value to me. And he has a fitness lifestyle for himself, a spiritual life. Like, he's constantly getting better in all areas of life. So I look up to him very highly. Now, when he recommended this book, I went ahead and bought it from a bookstore. And again, as always, books are always the best investment because they cost, this one might have cost me max $14, but for $14, the amount of perception, the amount of experience and knowledge, and the ability to look at my circumstances in another way that I've gained from this book is invaluable. Thousands and millions of dollars invaluable, and I got it for $14. It's crazy how every time I read a book, it's always a reminder of how good an investment in myself it is, how true that statement is right there. So anyways, what I want to talk about today is number 1, what he kind of goes over in the book. Number 2, what I gained from it. And then number 3, how I utilize what I gained from it in my life. How I actually utilize and made decisions from what I learned, put action into what I learned to make my life better. Now, I feel that's what I always want to do, right? I always want to learn something or get a new perspective, be able to shift my mindset on something from reading a book, enter their world, gain knowledge, gain information, right? But knowledge is we've all heard the term knowledge is power. Yes and no, right? It kind of depends how you define power. I think it's potential power. Knowledge is potential power. It's potential information, right? Information has so much potential. But let's say I have all the knowledge in the world and information in my head from reading 10,000 books and I die tomorrow. That's just that potentiality goes on, it either stops or it goes on to the next person. That's a whole nother tangent on its own, right? But that knowledge doesn't get utilized, right, in the reality that we live in. Now, if I have that same knowledge, that same information by reading this book and I actually utilize it, take action and make decisions to make my life better, to make other people's lives better, and to improve my life for the rest of my life, therefore making other people's lives better, especially with what I do. Now that is where I feel knowledge is power, the utilization of knowledge. Now with that aside, I guess I'm feeling it today. I want to talk about all these things. Anyway, so number 1, what did he talk about in the book? What is actually in the book? Like I mentioned, he talks about his life before a little bit, not a whole ton. He talks about, I think right away he gets to the point he lived with his parents, and this was like right when World War II was starting, right when it was kind of getting ugly for Jewish people living in Germany. And he realized that, it was getting unsafe, right? Another documentary I watched that was beautiful on this and the way it illustrated how it actually occurred was it was a process, right? They started out in Germany, the propaganda guy, I forget his name, but the guy who was in charge of all the propaganda, really famous, really well known, started out just making little lies about the Jewish people. Oh, these people, they're bad tempered, they're the ones, they steal money, whatever it is. And then at first didn't really stick that well, but if you tell a lie long enough, people start to believe it. That was the innovation, the advent of radio, the advent of radio, and they started telling on the radio nightly, weekly, every single day, right? It's kind of like watching TV. You hear the same thing every day. It doesn't matter how ridiculous it is, you start to believe it. It starts to stick. So it started out with very simple things, fast forward months, years. I think it was like the whole process was like 4 or 5 years, maybe even longer, 6, 7, 8. And they started, it went from they steal money to, hey, they're the freaking reason why we lost World War I, why you guys are all in famine and hunger while people die. They're the devil. They're not even human, right? That's the level it got to. And there was a whole gap in between. So anyways, this started happening and he realized like, okay, shit's getting dangerous. I need to get out of this country. I need to go flee. People were already fleeing. A lot of people did flee early on because that buildup started happening. They realized there was going to be a fulcrum soon. There was going to be a cliff jump soon where who knows what's going to happen. But people are starting to riot. We have to wear these stars. People are burning down our businesses. Like, it's getting unsafe. So anyways, his parents were not going to leave. And I forget how he said it, but he basically had a realization one day. And I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. This is hitting me good right now, hitting me hard, where he talks about how one day he realized he was going to go flee and something hit him where he's like, hey, I need to go. I need to stay with my parents. I can't leave my parents. I can't ditch them. We know something bad is going to happen or something weird. We don't know what's going to happen, but I can't leave my parents. I have to stay with them. And it was a personal conviction that he had. And that led to him and his parents getting taken into camp, right? So he was on a train. He went on the train to, the first camp he went to was Auschwitz, I believe, and that's a pretty well-known one. We all hear about that. We all know about it. He was separated from his parents. Long story short, he really never heard. That was it, basically. That was the last contact he had with his parents. The whole thing was weird. No one really knew what was going on in the beginning. Since then, he obviously knew, okay, they're dead, right? The probability of them being dead is basically 100%, extremely high. Which that alone is, man, this book just slaps you and then slaps you, or it shocks you rather, and it shocks you again. It really puts you in a state, in a place of just awe, of humbleness, humility, and a state of just observation and pure. It's like a mixture between like shocking, gratitude for not having experienced that, for experiencing the exact opposite of being able to live freely, and then just like an understanding and disunderstanding of how that can happen, right? Like a pure just kind of sit there and blank stare after reading statements like that. And trust me, that's literally just the beginning. It's probably the first 20 pages of the book. Literally just tip the iceberg. So anyways, he goes to the camp and he wrote books. He was a scientist, a psychologist, where he would help people get through psychological, trauma, right? And he kind of learned from like the Freudian, the different methods, different methodologies that were around that day. He ultimately was making his own and discovering his own methodology, and that's kind of what he utilized to grow upon in the camp once he got out, right? But that's towards the end. So anyways, he goes to the station. They're getting dropped off. They don't know what the hell's going on. They don't know if they're going to be in the camp for a week, for a day, for a year, right? They don't really, no one knows. They're just like, hey, we're just getting shipped on a train. They're telling us to take off my watch, my clothes. I don't know if I'm going to see my clothes again. I'm putting these rags on me. I get tattooed a number. There's one line going left and one line going right. All the old people, sick people are in the right line. All the young, fit, and children are on the left line. Some children are in the right line. What's going on? It was a shit show in the beginning. No one knew what the hell was going on. So he goes off of that. Obviously goes through months and years of what the camp was like, experiences such as a young boy who had frostbite on his toes. Keep in mind, it's very cold up there. They were living in rags. Maybe they had shoes if they were lucky. If they were extremely lucky, they had shoes that had laces. A lot of people had to steal wire to use laces to tie their shoe, and then they'd get in trouble if they had wire. They'd get beaten by guns, by the butt end of a gun, so like ribs broken, that's bruised. They're not even eating much. They're eating pea soup. They got lucky if they got the bottom of the soup where all the peas were. Most of the time it was just water, pea flavored water. That was what they got to eat per day. Maybe a little bit of bread. So anyways, on top of all this, he talks about how when a boy had frostbite, what they did in the infirmary, which was ran by soldiers, sometimes volunteer doctors such as himself, his toes had frostbite, they chopped them off. Boy's toes are gone, he's a toeless, he has no toes anymore. Maybe he got to recover, I don't know, for a couple of days, and they sent him who knows where. Maybe he probably died, he probably got burnt in the oven because he couldn't work anymore. A 12-year-old boy. And it's just due to where he lived in that circumstance. It's just due to where, what religion or belief he chose to believe, or his parents, his family, his heritage chose to believe. And it's one of these books you can tell right now where sometimes you just get teary-eyed and you just think, man, you're just like, you just ask yourself questions like, how could this happen, right? And it really puts you in a place of like I mentioned, all those words I said, like it's hard to put a word on how it makes you feel, and misunderstanding and humility, understanding, awe, disbelief, belief, right? And how lucky we are and how much you want to go make a change after reading that. And so he talks about circumstances like that. He talks about how when he was in the camp, he had a wife and a kid. He hadn't seen his wife in, maybe it had been 2 years. The time kind of just runs together at that point. He's working in a camp, right? They kind of ship him out. You have different jobs, right? Some jobs are better than others. Some are way worse. It's a whole community of, you get lucky. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes you make friends with the right people. You get the right job. It's literally its own world. So anyways, he's digging this trench, frozen ground. He said it was just, you're literally just hitting your shovel against frozen ground because you're in the tundra basically. And he's digging and he's so tired. Everybody's so tired. And this bird, he's thinking about his wife. He's picturing her. That's kind of what got him along. A lot of people, he started to realize and observe a lot of people would have things that if they didn't have something to hope for or a goal, a purpose in life, if they didn't have something to think about that kept them alive, they would die. They always talk about how they knew when someone would die. They could literally pinpoint, that guy's gonna die in a week, that guy's gonna die in 7 days, that guy's gonna die in 4 days, because they could tell when someone gave up. And he talked about when he was digging, he would always think of his wife. He'd always picture her, talk to her in his mind, and revisit those memories. And he was digging, thinking about his wife. And I'm sure he did this a lot, but he said as soon as he thought of his wife, like maybe she's dead, she probably is dead. The survival rate is what, like 10%, 5%, maybe probably even less. So as soon as he thought of her, this bird landed in front of him, literally right in front of him, and started staring at him as soon as he thought of her. And he was just digging and the bird was right there. And that was a moment that touched me. And he said he knew right then that his wife was not here on this earth anymore. And that was a part of her, a vision of her visiting him, showing him that, hey, I'm with you. And the title of the book is called Man's Search for Meaning. And what he talks about, kind of like I alluded to with they knew how someone was going to die, they could tell he really utilized and observed what meaning meant for people and how meaning could carry people past triages or parts of their life that are horrible, parts of their life that are abhorrible, parts of their life that you would never want to go through, horrible, right? And talked about how they could find meaning in that. What was, if you have to march 2 miles at 7 a.m. in a blizzard without shoes, your feet are beyond frozen, you can't feel anything, you haven't eaten a good meal in a year, You've been eating pea soup. If you fall, you're gonna get hit by a gun, right? You don't know what the hell is happening. All you guys look the same, shaved heads, you're skin and bones, you're the skinniest you've ever been in your life. You don't know what the hell is going on anymore. You're delirious, your legs have jaundice, or I forget what it was called, but basically where they swell up. I think it was like a jaundice and mixture of something else. Your legs are swollen, you can't even feel them. You're marching, right? This is your existence. Some people are giving up, some people are falling. You don't know if you're gonna die tomorrow, today. You don't know what's happening, but how are you gonna find meaning in that? He talks about how ultimately the decision to decide how you feel, the decision to decide how you respond to any circumstance, to any event, is always in your control. How are you going to respond to throwing up your guts, to your feet being frozen, to having to march, right? You ultimately have the choice to respond how you feel in that moment, to control how you feel, to control how you respond. No one can take your response away from you. Now, even saying that, I still realize that I'm still wrapping my head around how that can happen, to how someone can do that, because thinking about marching to, I don't know, probably more than 2 miles, but every single day, 5 miles in a frozen tundra with barely, maybe a shoe on, a super flimsy shoe, and then rags, and you're freezing, you haven't eaten. I've never touched anything close to that amount of pain, close to that amount of just like pure feeling and rawness of life. And he talks about even then, the freedom to decide how you react, how you respond, how you feel is in your control. And he talks about how that is how he and the people that survived found meaning. They found meaning in controlling how they responded and meaning in what they looked for, right? Maybe they utilized the hope of seeing their wife, seeing their family, being able to eat a meal. He talked about how the people that actually didn't starve to death or didn't die were the ones that would talk while working with their friends about the lavish meals they'd be eating once they got home, how they'd be laughing about this 2 years from now, how they'd be sitting with their family and eating this, mashed potatoes and the turkey, this, and that was what helped some people survive. And the absence of that, some people didn't survive. So it's very interesting how he talked about that and his experience. And I'm still wrapping my head around this. Like I said in the beginning, I know I'm going to read this multiple more times because it's such a dense, thick, and raw book that I've never experienced anything close to that, nor have 99% of us watching this, where it's the relatability is there because it is human experience, but the relatability of a similar experience is not there for me. So you really have to go outside of your life and put yourself in his life and put yourself more so in what the meanings he's talking about, rather than what situation can I extract or extrapolate a similar meaning from. Now, that's not to say that we don't have hard things in our life or our brain responds in an extremely similar way, because our brain can respond and make anything wrong, right? Our brains are designed to find what's wrong. Think about someone that you know, or someone that we all know rather, that has everything material-wise, the money, the relationships, the cars, the house, the Ivy League schools. And think about how many of those people do we know that are in and out of rehab or committed suicide, that have everything that we think that is going to make our life easier. So our brain is designed to find what's wrong, right? So we can still relate on it to that level, to where, hey, how do I utilize this to still control how I respond no matter what is going on? I don't have to put myself, nor should I, in a similar situation, right? So I love this book. That is a long but great number one. Now, number two, what did I utilize? What did I learn from this book? What is the knowledge that I gained? I kind of alluded to that in what I was just saying. It really put me in a place where I could shift my perspective and realign what I thought about any experience in my life and any experience I will ever experience, because what you read from a book does stick with you. Reading something on paper, and I took notes during this book, I don't remember the percentage, but I know Tony Robbins always says this, and it makes total sense. Reading something rather than hearing it, right, increases your rate of drawability from it, or memory, or ingraining in your mind, right, in your brain and your nervous system, knowledge, information, by 20%, 30%, whatever it is. It increases it more when you read it, right? Listening to a podcast versus reading a whole book, a dense book on one subject. I really do love podcasts, but if I read a book on that same subject, I'm going to know it more, I'm going to feel it more, because I'm taking time out of my day to read it. It's on paper, right? There's so many more things involved in reading a book. Now, I'm also writing. Writing increases it by X percentage more, let's say total 50% more. Maybe I'm able to draw from it. Maybe I'm able to store 50% more information that I can then utilize later on by both reading and writing from it. So I did this with this book, and like I mentioned, what I really gained from it, and still am gaining and will gain in the future as I continue to read it, as I still process it, is how I can shift my mind frame in any moment to call bullshit on myself and call bullshit on what's happening in my life. If I'm hiking and I'm thinking about, man, the sun is too hot, I'm getting sweaty, man, I'm wearing this nice shirt, I want to go out and go see this girl later, I'm sweating, now I'm going to have to take a shower, and I'm going to have to drive home. And what the hell am I saying, bro? Like, I'm out hiking in Colorado, I'm in the sun, I have water, I have clothes on, I have a car to drive, I'm able to do free things that I want to do, I'm being active, I'm breathing in clean, fresh air, like I'm getting vitamin D in my skin, I'm healthy, I'm vibrant, I'm young, I'm happy, I'm excited, I have a car, I have the most futuristic transportation device that man created in the past 200 years, other than planes or whatever else, but like, I literally have my own thing. I can drive home. I have clean water to shower. I can drink my water in my shower, and it's still cleaner water than 80% of the world. Holy shit, like that thing reframes me. That reframing technique literally changes my life, changes my moment, changes my experience. Because if you're watching this video, we all have so much going for us with the advent of technology, for living in a free world, living in the most small, globalized world ever, where we have access to information, to videos, to people that 99.9% of the human race has never had access to, right? We have healthy food if we're watching this. Maybe not all of us, but I can only speak from my experience. I am so blessed to have everything that I have and to then use it to help others. This is why I don't give a shit about anything on like any movement that has to do with like just go on social media and just exist. Hell no, I can't, because I have too much going for me, because that's not real life, right? And reading books like this shows you that any belief that we have, and I am no exception, where I put myself in this state, this boat, this belief where I'm starting to see what's wrong. I'm starting to create this dumbass story in my head where it's, oh my gosh, I got to do this, and then, oh man, like I'm working, and then I have to work 8 hours today. I'm going to be on my feet. I won't be able to eat. Like, what the hell am I even saying? Our brains are designed to find what's wrong. We already went over that. Now, how can I get it to where it's designed to find what's right? And that's by reading books like this, by realizing that all those problems that I outlined pale in comparison, are non-existent in comparison, aren't even real, are obviously fake regardless, but also in comparison to what anybody went through in the Holocaust, to what anybody went through just living, existing 2,000 years ago, not having access to food, to clean water, to technology, to heated rooms, to living in my own apartment, right, in Denver, Colorado, where everything is so easy and there's so many resources. And now I can be resourceful and utilize this to improve and experience more joy in my life and give more joy to other people. That right there is what I've gained from reading this book. Now, number 3, how have I utilized it, and how can you utilize what you've learned in this video, or by hopefully going out and reading the book and energizing, entertaining yourself with your own information, your own knowledge that you gain from the book, your own perspective, perception, and how do you actually put your own hands in the world and create and make some art out of it? How do you shape your own pottery out of this, right? Your own creation. That can, if I make a vase out of this from pottery, how can I fill it with water and give water to other people? If you get the metaphor I'm saying, how can I utilize that information to make a vehicle, to make something, to make an experience, to make a change within myself, within you? How do you then utilize that from reading this book to help others, to give to others, to provide for others, to give value to others? So this is such a powerful book, man. What I have been doing by reading this, again, starting with myself, if I can create the inner world to be a state of gratitude, of joy, of perception, and the ability to have tools and patterns to break free whenever I do get into a state, whenever I fall into a trap of overthinking, of negative thinking, that can then put me in a positive, creative, confident, powerful state more often. Therefore, I'm doing more powerful, confident, creative, positive things that put more joy and more love into the world with people around me, on the internet. That's a whole nother topic with how much access I have to the rest of the world. And it's just so beautiful how we can utilize these tools learned from a book to improve our own lives, thus improving other people's lives. If you watch my other video on the concept of the I always call it like the ripple effect, right? If you have a body of water, which is humans, human consciousness, and I drop a drop of positivity, of love, of creativeness in that water, therefore the way how I act, right? In the way how I act and who I am, now that creates a ripple. It makes my friend that I talk to, my client that I go see that day, if I'm in a positive, amazing state and I get them in a positive, amazing state, feeling better, happier, more vibrant, more healthy, more confident, more excited, what's going to happen when they go home? What's the difference between your dad, your mom, your parent, your brother, your grandparent coming home when they're excited, they're happy, they're joyful, they're blissful, full of life? And then what's the difference between how that's going to affect you, how that's going to affect the environment in your day and their day, and anybody else they see on the way home, than them coming home depressed, depleted, annoyed, tired, bored? What's going to be the two outcomes and decisions and actions between that? That's the difference right there. And I'm using this as an example. That's the difference right there between watching 6 hours of Netflix and binge watching a show, going to sleep late, waking up late, feeling like shit, feeling like crap. You feel tired, so you don't want to make a meal, so you warm up a microwave meal. You don't work out because you feel tired after eating that. You sit on social media because you're kind of depressed you didn't work out, and you feel bad about what you see other people working out, and then you feel shitty, and then right? We all know where that goes. We've all fallen in that trap. I've fallen in that trap. It's a trap, right? And that alludes to what I was saying earlier. Now, if I'm in an energized, positive, confident, powerful state, therefore by someone put me in that state, or I put myself in that state by reading a book, watching a video like this, even if I start to step in that trap, I can yank myself out of it, especially if I have the tools, the knowledge, the systems to snap myself out of that and put myself in a powerful, confident state and loving state. What's going to be the difference in results in that? It's not going to be 6 hours of Netflix. Like I said, I'm just using that example. I guess there's nothing wrong with that if you find joy in it and it does improve your life, like truly. That's a whole nother discussion. But anyways, you're probably going to do more things those are more the things that you're going to start to do that you know you should be doing, right? Oh, you know what? I've been wanting to read this book forever. You know what? I'm going to take 15 minutes to read it today. And then maybe that turns into a habit because you're like, damn, that 15 minutes I did earlier, that 5 minutes, right? I'm using small time increments because a lot of times starting small is actually better. That 2 pages I read yesterday felt really good. You know what? Today I'm going to do 3. That 5 minutes of stretching, of breathing, of lying down on my back and eyes closed and just feeling my body actually felt pretty good. You know what? Maybe I'm going to do that today again. Maybe I'm going to do it tomorrow. Or maybe that led me to calling that friend, calling that parent that I should have called a long time ago and just telling them thank you. I love you. I forgive you. I am sorry, right? And that leads to a whole nother result. And just imagine how you would feel between option 1 I discussed about the Netflix and the food or whatever. Just as an example, really play with me here. Put yourself in that state of how that would make you feel after doing that for a day, for a week. Versus how would you feel then if you were in a powerful, excited state, and you started to do those things you always realized you needed to do, wanted to do. And not only did you do them, but you did them with joy. You did them with passion. You did them with conviction. And you felt great while doing it. You started to realize that you really broke through a pattern, a story that you'd been telling yourself. And it was not only not that bad, but that's not even true. It was enjoyable. You felt great while calling your dad. You felt great while calling your mom, your friend, your brother, your sister, your cousin, and forgiving him and loving him. You felt awesome while reading. You felt amazing while meditating and feeling your own body. You felt awesome while going for a walk. What is the difference? Feel the difference between how this feels versus this. And you decide for yourself how you want to live. What kind of outcomes do you want in your life? Right? And this is the power of what a book, power of what a video, power of what a thought, power of what knowledge can do when utilized in your life. And this is truly where this book has put me and still activating, actualizing in how I want to design my life and what kind of outcomes do I want in my life, right? These are just two examples. There's multiple other examples of outcomes I can have in my life. How do I want to design your life? Because ultimately, we control things, we don't control things. We can control how we respond to things. We can control how we utilize the environment that we're in. We don't control the environment that we're in to an extent. We don't control what's happening in our life, but we control whether we look at it, whether it's happening to us or for us. We control we don't control our resources, our environment. We control whether we want to be unresourceful or resourceful. That is the lesson that I've been applying from this book. How do I control? How do I respond? What decisions I make? Once I focus on that, once I focus on what I can control, well, my life becomes what I control. My life becomes the event, the outcomes of my decisions, my actions. And that right there is power. The ability to make decisions and be a creator of your life rather than a manager or a victim of your circumstances. Hope you enjoyed this video. I love this one. This is probably one of my longer ones, but if you watch this whole thing, I hope you gain something from it. I truly do. I love you. I support you. Let's go make each other better. Let's keep putting ourselves in a positive environment, a positive state, and make the world better for us and other people. Peace out. Done.